This is the 22nd episode of the Effective Executive podcast. And this week, I have titled this The Functional Connection to the Customer. Over my career, I've worked with many different organizations, and sometimes I've been invited by the CEO or president of the company. But most of the time, I enter an organization through a functional executive. So a functional executive is really involves the functional separation of work. So we've got sales, we got operations, we got finance, we got IT, we got contact center, and in going into organizations, there's an executive over one of those departments. So that's a functional executive. And it's interesting to me that these functional separated areas are like kingdoms. And what I do involves synthetic thinking, meaning the whole. And you can go to my YouTube channel, and I've got a whole section in there on synthetic thinking, the95method.com/synthetic. And you can watch those videos, or even the 95method.com/effective playlist. Either one of those will take you and give you a little more background on looking at the whole rather than just a functional area or a part of the organization. So synthetic thinking involves all these departments. But when you've entered an organization through a functional executive, what you immediately find is, the reality is everybody has their own area, their own territory. And in fact, I almost compare it to working in a whole nother culture. It's like going from England to France, or France to the Soviet Union. I mean, each functional area, each department has its own way of thinking, their own way of doing things, their own leadership. It's really interesting to me. And you often, especially when you work with functional executive and you're trying to teach them synthetic thinking, it means that you got to kind of go over into another department or area in order to be able to see the whole. And often that's met with the common phrase nowadays is stay in your lane. Don't mess with my stuff. I've got my functional thing to do over here. And you're in that area, stay there. Stay in your box, if you will. And this is a huge problem in organizations. And I find that when organizations try to mitigate this through cross-functional teams, they fail. Because each of these functional areas, each of these departments have different aims and purposes associated with it. So not only do you have this lingo problem that you might have between finance and IT, but you've also got different aims and purposes, and sometimes that's even complicated more by how they're rewarded, how they get their bonuses, how they get their pay increases. So these are all things that become barriers in an organization. So the one thing I found is that the tie that binds is one thing, and that's the customer. And the first thing to determine in any system is who creates value for the customer. And I can tell you right off, it's all the people that are customer facing. But more importantly, what I found is that when there's a connection to the customer for other functional areas, it creates the tie that binds. People start to say, oh, well, I didn't realize that. And if finance understands that you create value for customers in this way, it sheds new light on the work that they do. And when they also come to the conclusion, as sometimes it's difficult to do, that the frontline people or the people that are customer facing are the ones that create value for the customer, it takes on a different view. It takes on a different amount of importance from any of the functional areas that are involved. And so you don't achieve this through just throwing a group of people into a cross functional team and saying, go team. You get it uh, by having a touchstone that you can go to. And so this is the thing that I build. Now, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. You may have your own way, and that's fine. But the first thing is this touchstone is what I call a system map. And the way I build it is I build it through looking through a customer lens, and it's part of my executive education program and coaching and business advising and so forth. But regardless, you need to develop that touchstone so people can kind of understand what it is that they're looking at in an organization. It's very visual. You can put it up on a wall, system map. And stories from are part of at least the system maps that I build. So stories in case studies of customers having to deal with the organization. It gets a connection to the customer where they might not normally have in that organization, and it changes your view. So this connection to the customer, I hear people all the time. They're talking about, oh, you got to have empathy, if you're going to be an executive or whatever. Well, to me, that's an output. You get that by doing these things, by doing things like a system map and telling stories. And the output of that is then you gain empathy and appreciation and an understanding of the impact that you have on the customer from where you sit. So the first thing to me is getting that awareness. And like I said, I get that awareness through a system map and case studies or stories. And then once I have the awareness, now I can kind of set my sights on doing a redesign of the organization. Maybe the way we functionally separated the work is not the right way to best serve a customer. So if this is helpful to you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell. Also, you can subscribe to these podcasts at the95method.com/broadcasts, which I'll put down here. And you'll get updates on things like this. They're little ideas for you to become more effective as an executive and create value for your organization.